Hello, hello, hello. This is Stephanie McNeil, and I am a certified relationship educator. I am licensed in identity and destiny. And for the past 9 years, I've been known as a forgiveness coach. But really, none of those credentials mattered because one day I was confronted with my truth. And the truth was that although I had been called by God, although I had all those certifications, I hadn't forgiven. And so I had to go back to the basics and really evaluate everything. I had to evaluate the message that God had given me. I had to really um, take a look inside of myself to find out what was missing, what more did I need to do. And what I discovered is that the message that God had given me, the message of press, I had been interpreting it all wrong. Well, you see, press stands for perseverance, resiliency, endurance, submission, and supplication. And so, what I thought it meant was that no matter what was going on in life, you just press through, you just keep going no matter what. But that's not all. That's not really what it means. But I also discovered is that it means that you need all of those mindsets in order to live a lifestyle of forgiveness, which, in my opinion, is a lifestyle of freedom. But what God has been showing me lately, what it means is that when you press, you're pressing into Him, you pressing into His will, you're pressing into His way. And so when you think about perseverance, resilience, submission, endurance, submission, and supplication, it is pressing into that mindset. So today I want to share with you an element of press that God impressed upon me recently. And it's dealing with one of those ones that we don't like. It's dealing with submission. Okay. So one day last week I was praying, right? Nothing unusual about that. Wasn't necessarily anything pressing going on in my life. Just kind of normally going on my day, doing my daily routine, my daily prayer, and all that. Well, as soon as I put my head down to pray, I heard stop talking to a particular person. God was directing me to stop talking to a person. And I'm like, what? Like, I did not hear what I heard. I mean, and I immediately stopped praying at that point in time because I was thinking, that's odd. Like, where did that come from? Like, I wasn't praying about that person. I wasn't praying about the relationship. I wasn't even thinking about it at all. And so I said, okay, maybe I didn't hear what I heard, and I'll just keep going on about my day. So I started my ordinary work. So one of the things that I participate in is the Church for Entrepreneurs. I'm a member. And on that particular session, they were talking about, of course, obeying God, and obeying God when it don't make sense, and obeying God when you don't know the outcome, you don't know why, just all of that stuff. And I was like, OMG, I can't ignore this. This is a confirmation, because I tried to ignore it. I wanted to ignore it, but here it was coming back to me again. And so I said, okay, God, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to sever my communications with this person. So then I'm like, okay, how? I was like, okay, I'll text and tell them about it via text. Then I'm like, Stephanie, that is so elementary. That is so high school. Like, you cannot text somebody to tell them that. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna call but I didn't know when. And normally when we have our conversations, it's Friday night. That's like my Friday night thing that I do. And we helped each other through the pandemic. You know, we had a great relationship and totally platonic, right? So, it just so happens on Friday, I didn't get the opportunity to talk to him because I had another engagement. So I was like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna say, what am I gonna talk to him? Like, how am I gonna tell him this? Because I really, first of all, I didn't want to stop talking to him because I enjoy talking to him. We have a lot in common. We can just talk for hours and hours, and he listens to me. Okay, and so I just got the courage and I just picked up the phone and talked to him. And as I was sharing with him what God told me, he was like, "Hey, go with God. We had a great season. It was great, but hey, who knows what God has for you? Who's to say this is forever? Just all that stuff." And I was, to tell you the truth, I was disappointed and relieved because I was like, I want him to say, "Oh no, I don't want to stop talking to you." You know how that is. Well, that's how I am sometimes. You just want people to like say something like to make you feel like it was enjoyable for him. Because I am, I know it was enjoyable for him. Let me stop talking. But anyway, he was like, encouraging me to do the right thing. And let me tell you something. If you have somebody in your life like that encourages you to do right, then that, is a quality person, especially someone who is encouraging you to obey God. I mean, that is a quality person. So, anyways, the conversation was bittersweet. We ended the conversation and, I went about my day. But what I wasn't prepared for was the actual grief. I started to feel loss, and it's LOSS. I started to feel a loss. Like I I wasn't expecting that. And so what did I do? Found an excuse to call him back. And I talked to him briefly and everything, but what I understood when I did that was that was partial obedience. And as I began to process this whole thing and process what happened, the story of Abraham dropped in my spirit. And if you don't know the story of Abraham, he was called by God to be, the father of many nations. And God told him he was going to have a son. And at first he didn't believe it, and his wife didn't believe it, and they created a whole mess by Abraham slept with his wife's servant and bore a son, and that caused all kinds of problems within their household. And so Abraham sent Hagar and her son, as it said in the Bible. Hagar sent Abraham sent Hagar and her son away, which was his son. And so they just had to really believe God. So finally, God did bring them together. I believe he was 100 and Sarah was 90, but he believed God. And so God brought him this son, Isaac, his only son. And so one day, God told Abraham to get up, and he wanted him to sacrifice his son. And I'm going like, okay, God has made all these promises to him, but he told him to get up and go to another place where he was going to sacrifice his son. Okay, so that's surprising. But the other surprising thing to me was Abraham got up the next day without hesitation and obeyed God. I mean, that just always struck me because I tend to be slow to obey, and slow obedience is disobedience. And But so when I had that conversation with him that second time, I was really convicted because it's like, okay, partial obedience is disobedience. So I was like, okay, fine. I am going to disconnect. I'm going to do what God has told me to do. I'm going to obey because I have a lot of promises from God as well that I'm believing for. And I don't want to be the one in my way blocking my own blessings. Okay. Because I've been in my way for a long time. And so I want the lines of communication to be open. So, so that was, Saturday. And however, on Monday and Tuesday, which today is Tuesday, I found myself this morning grieving. And you know what I did? I allowed myself the space to grieve. I allowed myself the grace to grieve because I was connected to this person emotionally. He was an emotional support to me. I was an emotional support to him. And the thing that I was thinking about this morning was that um, it happened. I mean, our time together was Friday night, and I remember when I was in my marriage, Friday night was my ex-husband's time to go and be with his side chick or to do whatever he was doing. It was always a Friday night. And so I believe that somehow by me filling that time on Friday night with company, that sort of, was healing to me. And so now God is asking me to again let it go. And so I'm like, I wonder, I wonder what God is doing. However, what I also decided to do after having my moment, having that time to process, having that time to grieve. And let me just share with you, there are 5 stages of grief. Um, and it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And after having my moment this morning, I have decided to accept that this season is over, and I am just uh, leaning into the lesson because what I know about God is that whenever there are subtractions, when God asks you to subtract something from your life, he's wanting to multiply something else. Did you get that? When God asks us to subtract something, it's not to punish us, it's not to deprive us, because he will withhold no good thing from us. But God doesn't add things back to our lives, he multiplies. And so by me accepting, that will take me farther along in the grief process. And so I can go back to a place of peace. And so I want to encourage you that if you are experiencing something hard in life, something that God is asking you to let go of, I want to encourage you to trust God. He knows the beginning and the end and the in between. And since his thoughts and his plans for you are good, you can trust him and let it go. Because if there's one thing that I've learned about God is that he is completely trustworthy. He is completely trustworthy. He is the only one that's completely trustworthy. So I want you to be of good courage And I am encouraging you as I am encouraging myself to press. And PRESS stands for perseverance, resilience, endurance, submission, and supplication. And in this point in time, sometimes God calls us to submit to Him, not because we necessarily agree with it, not necessarily because we understand it, not necessarily because we want to, but because when you press, you're pressing into His will, into His way, and His way of doing things. And I guarantee you that in the end, it will be sweet. It might be bitter right now, but in the end, when it's all said and done, it's going to be sweet. And so I appreciate you for listening today. And I have a resource that I created to help you press in your life's journey. And it is called The Mindset of Freedom. And in that book, it's a mini book, I share with you how, or some concepts on how you can learn how to press yourself. And so you can get it at freedtolove.com/mini book. That's FREED, the number 2, love.com/MINI book. And so I want to leave you, as I do always, with the thought that forgiveness is a daily conscious choice. But I promise you, it's worth it, and you're worth it. Until next time, peace.